Do you have any comment on the FEC violation filed against your office?
There is no violation, so there's no violation.
Do you think that's a sign of you taking dark money?
Oh, no, no.
Okay, let's bring in the former chief counsel for the House Judiciary Committee, Julian Epstein, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, Sagar and Jetty, and from the Heritage Foundation, Hans von Spakovsky. By the way, former member of the Federal Election Commission himself. So, Hans, I'll start with you. You've seen the filings. What do you make of the case so far?
There are potential very serious violations here. She and her chief of staff were in legal control of a political action committee. So there's a potential there for not only illegal contributions that benefited her campaign, illegal coordination, and also reporting violations. There's certainly enough there for the FEC to open up an investigation. And if it looks like this was an intentional and knowing violation, then there would be the potential for the Justice Department to open up a criminal violation.
So that's a separate track from FEC based on what they found.
Right.
Washington Times has this in their article on this today, saying the appearance that she's involved in a self-dealing arrangement is particularly troublesome for Ms. Ocasio-Cortez because the New York Democrat presents herself as a working-class champion against the corrupting influence of corporate money and special interests. Julian.
You know, look, the details of this are very, very sketchy at this point. There's 90% of the facts that we don't know and 10% that have been alleged. If they do arise to something that's credible, I think it should be handled the way everything else should be handled when there's a suggestion of a scandal or something improper. There should be an appropriate investigation. And I don't think, whether it's Trump in the White House, whether it's a member of Congress, I think the idea of trying to argue against an investigation when there's credible, if there are credible accusations, is just a lose-lose argument.
Tucker, how much of this do you think is inexperience versus she and her chief of staff being in cahoots and really trying to scam the system, knowing that everyone's going to be looking at them?
Yeah, I spoke to a Republican close to the White House and talked about how they pointed out that inexperience could point to both this and the campaign finance violation, alleged campaign finance violation that the Congresswoman was grilling Michael Cohen about, with the allegation of campaign finance violations with regard to the president. And so they said in both cases it's clear that these things could both be a matter of inexperience, it could be a matter of just ineptitude, but that because of our political system that both have become high-profile cases, and now she's also in hot water for something similar very much herself.
There's one thing that Hans and I probably agree on, Hans being a former commissioner, which is what is and is not a campaign violation, finance violation, is notoriously vague, poorly defined in the statute, sometimes defined by the FEC regulations, and probably unconstitutional for vagueness in many cases. I'm one of the few Democrats who argue, and I get a lot of guff from this, that Michael Cohen probably would have never been convicted by a jury.
A lot of people
because the law is just that ambiguous on hush money.
Yeah,
and I get a lot of guff
there have been cases
from the left on
that show that are just a mess, and it's something that needs more clarity.
We are long overdue for a clarification in statute about what is and what is not a campaign finance.
Okay, I'm sure the Congresswoman doesn't want to be the subject of that case. Okay, the president now pushing back as he says that this is a disgrace, this is a massive fishing expedition going after him, his businesses, his family. But Congressman Ted Lieu, Democrat, tweeting this: the fact that our investigation is wide-ranging doesn't mean it's a fishing expedition. It means there are lots of potential fish to catch. Hans, a lot of people are calling this the pre-impeachment phase. What do you make of it?
Look, Congress does have a lot of authority through oversight to do investigations, but that's usually related to how the executive branch is operating under the money that's been appropriated for it. And also, if new legislation is needed. I haven't seen any of that here, and I haven't seen any specific evidence of actual violations of the law, which is usually a basis before you start an investigation. I have to say, Adam Schiff seems to be copying Joseph McCarthy in wanting to open up investigations when they don't actually have any evidence of any